From the Newfoundland Labrador perspective, you all, I think, will have intuited that Newfoundland Labrador is not the major emitter in Canada. We see those major emissions coming from 5 provinces. So combined Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia, 5 provinces are responsible for about 91% of Canadian emissions. However, Newfoundland and Labrador is an emitter in the Canadian context and is one of the provinces where emissions have been increasing and not on a downward trend. So while it's the case for other Atlantic Canadian provinces that emissions have been decreasing, we have seen that since 1990, Newfoundland and Labrador emissions have increased by about 7%, 6.9%. Major sources of emissions in Newfoundland and Labrador are largely from transportation and large industry, which includes the oil and gas sector. So no real surprises there, and it's actually quite in line with the Canadian trend. So we see in Canada that oil and gas in particular are the largest and fastest growing source of emissions in the country, and transportation is a close second behind that. In particular, we look to freight transportation as a major source of emissions in Canada. And so Newfoundland really kind of fits into that national trend of large industry, oil and gas in particular, being a major source of emissions, with transportation coming second. And that's helpful. These kinds of breakdowns are helpful because they give us a sense of where to prioritize our efforts, right? So if we're going to reduce emissions, let's figure out the low-hanging fruit in the sources of emissions that are the largest part of the problem. Let's figure out how to get more of you taking the bus to the conference. Let's figure out how to reduce emissions in the industrial sector while ensuring a just transition for workers and communities.